Okay, so I will share with you what happens is that the business, on the business side, okay, if I have a business here and here is the water, or here is the airport, okay, and I have to receive my inputs, okay, what happens is that I want more inputs because this stuff, when there was the just-in-time supply chain, okay, it will take 1 day, okay, to clear off, maybe half a day. But now, when after Brexit, we have that to clear these things, okay, it takes, not, it's not a conditionality or anything. It takes, I don't know, between 1 day and 1 week, okay, between all the, and then there is an additional plus red tape border border checks for goods, okay? So what happens is that the business here, what does? Instead of asking for 100 pallets, okay, they say, okay, give me 1,000 pallets. Because if I cannot have 100 pallets that are cleared in half a day. So I need to stock up my merchandise because I don't know when the next lorry is gonna come, okay? And so when I have 1,000 pallets here, what happens that inventory goes up, but production goes down. Domestic production goes down, which means that productivity, the TFP, total factor productivity goes down. So a direct consequence of choosing to put a barrier on the just-in-time supply chain, it has automatically damaged the total factor productivity of the economy. This is actually verifiable in any economy textbook. If you take the UK data, you see that the total factor productivity, it has basically flatlined, okay, especially uh, since after the great financial crisis. But the big issue, it has been to go for Brexit, which is a total disaster. Okay, it's not my personal concern. Is that empirically, materially, by all angles that you consider these things, it's wrong. It's the wrong economic policy. It's idiotic. It's stupid. Okay, I don't want to be offensive, but what I'm trying to say in very plain, polite, and conversational manner is that when it's empirical economics, so when the business, they have to stock up more merch, right? Because there is all this problem, we don't have just-in-time supply chain, and you have to reroute. Even if you say, okay, I want to import stuff from Asia, from Africa, it's stuff that comes from China. Okay, if you order on fast fashion on Shein, Temu, so it takes a week. So it's the same criteria. If I import stuff from the United States, or from China, or from Australia, from India, it takes between a week or 10 days. So I'm not going to ask for one box. I'm going to ask for 100, 1,000 pallets, I don't know, for as much as I can, because it takes a long time. And so it's a break in the supply chain that basically stops the productivity within the UK. We don't want that. It's a choice that the British people have made, or that the Jew Brits have made. So I'm trying to explain you that if you miss stuff on the shelves, it's because you have chosen to do that. So the just-in-time supply chains allows the productivity to go smoothly because you have goods coming in and out all the time, and so you don't have shortfall, you don't have breaks in this, in the supply chain, in the supply of stuff that you need, and so you can keep producing, doing all the things that you want to do. I don't give a damn, but you can do it. So I'm more concerned myself that the Brits are. I don't know. It's quite bewildering. But from a macroeconomic standpoint, is that the productivity goes down because businesses, they stock up on inventory, so they don't need to produce that much because they import more, sort of. Okay, they can import more from Asia, but because it takes 7 or 10 days, and now there is the Strait of Hormuz, so nothing goes through, so it's going to take longer. Okay, so the just-in-time supply chain, it's a great thing. Yeah, I'm not saying it's perfect, but it worked marvelously for UK PLC because you are able to get your goods anytime, no problem, smooth moving around. There is no paperwork. So just go in and out, no problem. That's it. And the business cycle goes, the production of manufacturing or food or anything that you need, services, all sorts of stuff. Heavy industries, engineering, I don't know, if you are producing machineries, whatsoever. You need the stuff, you call it in from wherever you like, from the Dutch, from the Germans, you need some machineries to, I don't know, do some heavy industrial work. You get it in a day or something, and then you start going, and you keep going. But if you need to ask for something, and then you have to wait a week or a day or 10 days, and then you will not ask for one thing, you will ask in bulk for loads of stuff, you stock up, and then you stop your production. So that's one thing I digressed on, but it's important. So here we have, I don't know why I jumped on the total factor productivity, but it's important because the just-in-time supply chain, it's a good thing for the productivity of the UK economy, which means economic growth, which means jobs, which means wages, which means a better life. I don't know, easier. Okay, not so many problems. Then, other than presenting in a sketch the real evidence, which is basic common sense. Okay, you ask to any business in the UK, they tend to stock up more because there is this problem of goods moving in and out, and then the consequence is that the productivity suffers. Okay, you cannot be so much productive if you have an interrupting or you have a slow supply process. Okay, and then maybe you have shortages of things. Okay, that's basic common sense. That's it. So, okay, I apologize. It jumped. Right. No. Hold on. Bear with. Where we are. Where we are with this. Okay, we are here. Okay, so we have RPI. Let me go up. RPI housing. So housing costs should be going up towards 4%. So housing and household expenditure should go pick up a little bit again towards the 2.5%, perhaps tracing back the seasonality of the shopping season. Then here we have the big thing. We see that petrol prices, they've gone to 29.6%, 30%. Okay, diesel, petrol, unleaded, whatever you call it, it's at the pump 1.6, 1.7 pound, around that level. So we have here the 21, 23, 24%, 22, 21% RPI rate. So we are talking about 20 plus percent RPI rate for fuel cost, which is a huge cost that will basically constrain the ability of spending on other things. And it goes through the economy and then through economic growth. Shop services inflation should be around 4%. I don't know. I'm not so sure. Okay, housing and household expenditure. Yeah, that's the same data column that we had before. So RPI, all services are projected to go up again towards 3.5, 3.7%. So the services sector could see rising inflation, CPIH converging towards 2.6, 2.5. Core CPIH should be stable around 2.7%, 2.6%. CPIH services around 3.5, 3.7%. So as you all can see, all these projected forecasts, they are not converging to 2%. CPI index services, okay, 3.5%. So these tendentially, not tendentially, in practice will be a macro data factor that the Bank of England will have to take into consideration quite carefully, because not only for the price stability reason, okay, but also because if the Bank of England is not able to diminish the cost of borrowing, this basically keeps a sort of let's call it vicious circle into the economy, if we, okay, another basic common sense. So here we have, okay, let's put the pen. Here we have the old lady. Okay, we have the old lady, the BOE. Okay, so the BOE basically say, okay, I am, my bank rate is 3.75%, 3.75. So the BOE basically, the transmission mechanism goes to the commercial banks, okay? So there are the big four, big five, whatsoever. You all know there are Lloyds, NatWest, Barclays, HSBC, okay? So if their cost of borrowing is 3.75, they will pay, let's say, 3% to depositors, okay? So we have I of D, IR of D, so the interest rate for depositors. What happens, this big four, it's it's not that nice. Big four, okay. So here we have IR of D for depositors, okay. Let's say it's 3%. You park your money on your current account, and oh, it's not recording. One second. Great, we're back. So I was saying that this inflation data trade-off decision, it's important for the Bank of England and for inflation itself. Why? Because as I was saying, okay, we have here the old lady, the BOE, old street, old lady BOE, and she says, okay, my lending rate is 3.75%. So how goes the transmission mechanism is very simple. Anybody knows that. So the BOE transmits, let's say, the money, let's say, to commercial banks. Okay, commercial banks, they have their money already. Okay, they don't need the BOE. So, and it transmits money to HM Treasury, okay? To H&M Treasury, HMT. Okay, so the cost of borrowing for public and private sector. What happens that the commercial banks, they say, okay, if you park your money here, I will give you 3%. And here we have the IR of the depositor, okay? But what happens if I am a business? I have a PMI, I want to open a coffee shop, I want to sell donuts, I want to sell cookies in a food stall, I want to have a vintage shop, a vintage clothing shop, I don't know, I want to open a travel agency, anything, okay? You want to run a business. What happens that you have not the central, the commercial banks, which are the big four, okay? These are the big four, big four, okay? They say, okay, but I can give you this money. So the IR of B of the borrower, it's 6%, 6.5%. Okay, if you are a good borrower. If your credit rating is not so good, perhaps I will ask you 7.5 or 8% whatsoever, or etc. 7.5 plus. So okay, yes, this is much better. Okay, so why this fits through into the economy? Because if I am a PMI here and I am the borrower at 6.5, this goes, I am PMI here, I receive this from the commercial banks, from the big four, Big Mama gives an interest rate of the borrower, which is 7.5, and this goes here to the consumer. Okay, so what happens that the price goes up into goods, consumer goods. Okay, so inflation, sorry about that. I will do a pi for inflation. So, okay, we call inflation pi, Greek pi. Inflation goes up because it comes straight back up from the credit channel. Okay, so inflation goes up. And the Bank of England is stuck here at 3.75%, and it can't cut interest rate. And so on the other side, you have the nutters in Westminster. Okay, please don't be offended. You have the people in you have HM and Treasury, or the bond markets, what they say, the bond markets, etc., which ask the yield goes up. Okay, so it's a side effect. It fits into the cost of borrowing also for the fiscal capacity of the government to do what they want to do. Okay, so that's why this goes. The cost of borrowing fits through the fits back through into consumer goods, and also in inflation ways, mortgages or anything that you're paying back. It can be auto loans, credit cards, consumer credit loans, anything. Okay, it fits back through. It goes back into the ordinary person. Whether it's taxes, they know where they go right back to somewhere, which is always the same group of people, which is the ordinary folks who go to work and do their own stuff, or people like me who do that work on YouTube, or they have digital services, that sort of things. So that's a very interesting nonetheless, because it's based on interest rate. It's a very interesting mechanism, because these basically can be what happens here. We go in a thing that the business of the big four. Okay, now I'm diverging. We are big four. We are done for inflation. Then I will do another video with the other models. The business of the big four is basically to have the IR of the borrower, okay, always bigger than the IR of the depositor. Okay, so they pay to your current account 3% if they feel generous, but they charge 7% to the borrower. So 7 minus 3 is 4. Okay, that's the net interest rate margin that the banks bring into their pockets. This business, it's worth for the UK, which is called seigniorage, bank seigniorage. It's plus 20 billion pounds per year. This is the main business of the whole of the situation here. Okay, so why I am bringing up this this nice sketch, and I hope you enjoy it, because without inflation, what happens is that the rate of borrow will be marginally lower. So the margin of business of the big four will not be so fat. Okay, so it's a very difficult thing that the Bank of England has to decide. Okay, because the Bank of England makes 4 billion per year in issuing money, basically just in providing pounds. The cost of digitally creating money is zero. They earn from the gilts, from the bond market. So with something that costs zero, which is creating money, they both, with quantitative easing, they bought from HM Treasury, the debt management office. They bought the bonds, okay, and so they earn on that. And so this whole operation, it makes 4 billion per year only to the old lady of Threadneedle. That's the seigniorage. And this goes, it's the same anywhere. It's in the ECB. The ECB has a different system, because the ECB, the money that they get, they redistribute the money to the national central bank, and the national central bank, they pay back those money into the fiscal, to the treasury. Okay, I don't know what happens with the Federal Reserve. I haven't researched the exact functioning about that, but they print money, they create money digitally, and they make a profit. They should make a profit. So this whole circle, basically, this whole thing, Bank of England, commercial banks, PMIs, and consumer, it's all based on inflation and IR, interest rates. So inflation, it has to be somewhat always more than 2% for the big four to bring home this 20 billion plus per year. So the Bank of England will never ever achieve 2% price stability because it's not in the business model of the Bank of England and of the commercial banks. Okay. Then we can diverge and say you have to tax the banks, no, so forth. No. What I'm saying is that it's very simple. What I'm saying is that the core inflation target of 2%, okay, it's for the birds. It's bollocks. They don't want. It's only a thing that they talk about when they do the Bank of England press conference, when they decide what is the level of interest rate. But any ordinary person, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. Because it all goes through the commercial banks. But the commercial banks, okay, when you go to a commercial bank, okay, you go to a commercial bank, okay, you go to a commercial bank, you go to Lloyd's, I need the money to finance my buy-to-let business. Okay, so Lloyd's basically, it creates money from the ether, from nothing. They create the borrower account, and they credit, I don't know, 400K for your buy-to-let business. And you are the borrower, and you pay back Lloyd's. But these are digital money, which to Lloyd's cost 0. And then they receive the IR, the interest rate of the borrower. This is the business. Okay, Lloyd's does not need to ask the Bank of England. This channel does not exist, but it's not necessary. The commercial banks, they create credit willy-nilly, okay, because they have seniorage, they have this ability, they have this right of creating money from nowhere, and they earn on selling money. Okay, they are depositors of your money, and they lend money. Okay, but when they lend money, they don't necessarily move the depositors' money. They create the borrower account, ACC. Okay, they credit digitally 400K, for example, and the borrower has to pay back every month the docking bill, which is interest rate plus something. Okay, and that's how it works. This is the whole business, and it brings in plus 20 billion for the big four. And this needs inflation. That's why you have inflation in the housing sector, because there are people who are borrowing, and all this thing is called financial friction. Friction whatsoever. Okay, that kind of thing. Financial friction. Okay. Which, if we sum up the financial friction with plus supply chain friction, okay, this equals inflation, high inflation all of the time. So this is the biggest, not the biggest, the main characteristic, structural feature, as you want to call it, for the UK economy. Basically, after studying so long time, I knew these things before, but it's funny to do a sketch so that you can see on screen. And yeah, so that's basically why inflation, the pie, it's all the bake me a cake, right? Bake your cake and eat it. But the pie, it's for the banks, for the Bank of England, or it's a bit less for politicians, but it's for the banks. And who pays is the consumer, or is the borrower, basically. Okay, so Brexit is definitely not a good thing for any ordinary person. Okay, I'm trying to be as much objective and less biased as possible, because I'm describing the same that I've described you what happens everywhere in the world. So inflation, it's a feeding effect on itself, and it comes also from the credit channel. Okay, inflation comes from financial friction, supply chain friction. We have inflation. Okay, financial friction is the borrowing cost. Okay, so these are the dynamics basically sketched on an iPad. Okay, and that's why I can do all the multimodal inflation forecast, and if core inflation will be, say, I don't know, plug my finger up in the air and say what direction is blowing the wind, and say, okay, no, it's 2.8, 2.7. But the main fact is that the BOE in reality does not want inflation to go to 2% or below or undershoot, because it undermines the business. But then what it basically, you end up in a debt deflationary recession, which is another kettle of fish. Okay, so here I have other loads of models, which are ARIMA, SARIMA models for all the other things. But basically, the main takeaway is that when it comes in 2 days' time, Wednesday, today is Monday, I do not expect, okay, the consensus is 2.9%, but we saw that basically the big effect, it's mainly in energy prices, or what ordinary people do know. So it's housing, house bills, water rates, gas, electricity, diesel, heating oil. So that does not push up a lot the overall CPI or CPI rate, because the core inflation measure, it's a measure that strips out the energy or food cost. So they are not into core inflation. Okay, so core inflation, it's important to watch because it's strictly related to services. Okay, we see here in fact that services, CPI services here, it's 3.6, which is okay, it's 1 point above the core inflation. Okay, so what push a lot core, it's services prices. Okay, which is still higher than 2%. But services, they all reflect into wages of the services sector. So when you have the economy that is skewed to the services sector, if this one, what happens? Let's do another thing. Okay, let's do it here. Okay, so we are the consumer which pays pays for the pie, but basically we earn wages from services. Okay, so what happens when the services inflation goes down? You have to immediately look for earnings and wages and bonuses paid, because when wages services, okay, no, okay, it doesn't matter. What I'm saying is that when the index of services goes down, wages go down, services CPI goes down. So when this rate of inflation, this one on the screen here, okay, decreases, the transmission mechanism goes through wages, okay, and so it goes through consumption, goes through GDP. So there are lots of moving parts. It's very interesting, but the way of looking at inflation, okay, because inflation, they are prices, but they feed also into wages. Okay, the cost of a plumber, the cost of a carpenter, the cost of I don't know, anybody who provides some sort of services, garden, catering, whatever you call it. And so when the CPI index services goes into deflationary mode, you would see immediately that wages, they start to feel the pinch of less earnings. So this is a different, not a different, but perhaps a different angle of how to see inflation, because inflation is necessary for interest rate to be at a certain level because the banks need to print money and to earn from the interest rate of the borrower. But we have the services industry, so inflation in services, also it's a component of the wages in the services sector, and so they feed through each other, okay? So if I spend money in services, those go into wages of people working in the services sector. And so inflation is a necessary thing, but what it's important, okay, and I was missing the point here, is that, for example, when services CPI, let's argue that I have services here, CPI, okay, goes down, wages goes down. So what means that total factor productivity is decreasing. And so GDP, okay. So inflation index of services, it's also can be an indicator, a cofactor, not an indicator, a cofactor, which is more precise, of the wage component that goes into total factor productivity and ends up into the GDP figure and into the real business cycle. Okay, but again, the main thing is that the real business cycle of the British economy is strictly linked to this thing: financial friction and supply chain friction. Okay, these are dampening effect on the total factor productivity. So if you don't have these two, you are able to have lower inflation. You are able to have inflation stable, okay, inflation going down, and TFP, total factor productivity, going up. Because the economy, it's more, the business cycle is it's balanced. You are not buying for goods, bidding for goods. They are very expensive, and so you don't have a high borrowing cost. This is the case of the Eurozone. You have lower cost of goods, low inflation, you have low financial friction, and so you have a stable pie, okay, it's stable, and so total factor productivity can goes up, okay, it's not stagnant, okay, it can be stagnant for the opposite reason, that inflation is dampened, and so you have low prices, and so you have low total factor productivity, but the secret sauce is in stabilizing prices. That's why we have price stability. If we have a stable pie, inflation, we can have a stable total factor productivity and gross domestic product and real business cycle. But if we have these problems here from the beginning, that inflation starts here with supply chain and financial friction, and the financial friction starts at the top here in this situation here, starts here, the financial friction starts here, financial friction starts here at the credit channel transmission mechanism with the big four, so forth, to the borrowers and PMI. That means that there will be always high inflation, an average 3% inflation. So pi will be always 3%. 3%. That's the main takeaway. Okay. The main takeaway is that the average inflation cost is 3%. Now, let's do an experiment, okay? If I do average, if I do average the column here, and it's 4%. So from 1989 to 2026, the average inflation rate in 37 years is 4% for the services index. It's twice the 2% Bank of England price stability mechanism, okay? Not mechanism, price stability mandate, okay? So if we go to the CPI column, let's see, this will be perhaps 2%, let's see, average, it's 2.8%, okay? It's 2.84%. So it's 2.8%. In 37 years, CPI, the average is 2.8%. And this basically, it's the markup, it goes into the credit channel. it goes into the cost of borrowing. It goes into the business of the bank seniorage. Okay, they provide credit to PMIs, borrowers, and so they need inflation to justify that your cost of borrowing of your mortgage is 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8%, 10%, whatsoever, or your credit card is 20% interest rate, APR, and so forth and so on. That's why now we will do all columns here. We will see here, okay, this, what? No, there is a mistake here. In fact, this sum is not average. Average the column, my friend. Ref. Okay, no, that much. Okay. Not sum. Average. Okay. This is 4%. Okay, now redo average year. Average core CPI 2.5%. So it has never been 2%, always a little bit above 2%. So the monetary policy discussion that the Bank of England does when they do, even the ECB, the Federal Reserve, it's basically has no credibility at all in whatever they say. Nobody believes them. Here, okay, CPI annual rate, the average electricity, gas, fuel, 5.68% on a 37-year horizon. Okay, so the average inflation rate for electricity, gas, and other fuels, what is bills and utilities, it's 5.7%. Okay, it's not 2%. So this stuff goes all into wages, business profits, borrowing rates when it's for banks, but all the averages that we've done here, CPI, core CPI 2.5 is the least bad, but CPI is 2.8. Okay, and here housing services 3-4%. As we move into the housing sector, we go to 4, 5, 6, 7%, because all those measures which are not the sum, the average, okay, all those measures which don't come up on the telly, basically they don't report it properly. You have to go and look for the statistics. So you can all see that these are all way above 2% for this all sketch here in the iPad. So what to expect? As I said, I would not expect any particular surprise. Perhaps consensus is what it's perhaps the nearest thing that could be 2.6, 2.8%, because CPI on average it has been for 30 plus years 2.8%. We can expect that inflation rate will be 2.8%. Okay, so we are there. We are in the ballpark of this. The problem, as we all know, it's for the cost of fuel, petrol, housing, utilities, water rates, services, so forth and so on. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you managed to watch it all. Next time, as soon as possible, we will see the modeling here. I will show you some more complicated things, but not so difficult. But anyway, thanks a lot. I hope you enjoyed the sketch here and all the stuff that I have tried to convey to you in writing here. And yes, so thanks a lot, and see you next time.